I sat completely paralyzed in the glow of my monitors. My 18-year-old daughter was asleep exactly 40 feet away. She was dreaming about MIT dorm rooms and federal security badges. She had absolutely no idea that her grandmother and her uncle had just digitally signed her death warrant. My brain processed the data packets with absolute, terrifying clarity. Julian had stolen $15.4 million worth of Apex Dynamics' proprietary AI modeling code. He didn't just leak it, he actively sold it to a state-sponsored server farm in Beijing to cover his catastrophic underground margin calls. Under the Economic Espionage Act, that is a direct violation of federal law. It carries a mandatory minimum of 20 years in a federal penitentiary. But Julian didn't use his own chief technology officer credentials to execute the breach. He used a backdoor proxy. He routed the entire exfiltration through Chloe's newly issued Pentagon clearance ID. He spoofed her laptop's MAC address. He mapped the transfer to our residential IP. He cannibalized his own niece to save his stock options. I didn't scream. I didn't throw my keyboard against the wall. I picked up my encrypted burner phone and dialed Margaret's private number. It was 2:38 a.m. She answered on the fourth ring. "Evelyn, it is the middle of the night," Margaret sighed, her voice thick with expensive sleep medication and pure, unfiltered arrogance. "The IPO launches in 2 days. Do not bother me." "You routed Julian's treason through Chloe's clearance," I whispered. My voice didn't even shake. It was completely dead. Silence hung on the line. I heard the rustle of silk sheets. "I don't know what you are talking about," Margaret said, her tone instantly dropping 30 degrees into a defensive, predatory snap. "I am looking at the raw proxy logs," I said coldly. "You sold the AI source code to Beijing. You framed an 18-year-old girl. The FBI already generated an automated digital warrant for her IP address." I heard a heavy sigh on the other end of the line. It wasn't a sigh of guilt. It was the sigh of a CEO annoyed by a minor logistical error. Julian's voice suddenly echoed in the background. He had been in the room the whole time. "Evelyn, relax," Julian sneered through the speakerphone, his voice dripping with absolute sociopathic entitlement. "It's a temporary digital firewall." "You framed her for federal espionage," I repeated, my fingernails digging so hard into my palms they started to bleed. "We had to insulate the IPO, Evelyn," Margaret barked, completely dropping the facade. "If the board found out Julian lost that capital, the public offering would implode. We would lose hundreds of millions." "She is a teenager," I gasped, the physical sickness finally hitting my stomach. "She will go to federal prison. She loses MIT." "She is a minor with no prior record," Julian countered smoothly. "She'll get a slap on the wrist. A sealed juvenile file. We are saving the legacy of this family, Evelyn. It is collateral damage." "I am calling the Cybercrimes Division right now," I said. "Do it, and I will personally ensure the corporate lawyers bury you in civil litigation until you are homeless," Margaret hissed. Her voice was absolute poison. "We go public in 48 hours, Margaret commanded. "You keep your mouth shut. You do not touch those servers. When the IPO clears, I will hire Chloe the best defense attorney in California." The line went dead. I sat in the dark. I looked at the FBI warrant slowly populating on my right screen. They thought they had me cornered. They thought stripping a mother of her resources and threatening her with corporate lawyers made her helpless. They thought they had outsmarted a terrified, emotional IT worker. They completely forgot what I do for a living. The weeping, terrified mother died right there in that desk chair. My tears instantly flash froze. My heart rate slowed to a deliberate, methodical crawl. I am a senior zero-day threat hunter. I track international cyber terrorists in the dark web. I build digital cages for apex predators. And my family had just handed me the keys to their entire corporate infrastructure. "Okay," I whispered to the empty room. I didn't call them back. I didn't argue. I engaged weaponized submission. I opened a blank command terminal. I bypassed the standard Apex Dynamics employee firewall. Julian was a grossly incompetent CTO. He bought expensive security software but never actually configured the base-level routing protocols. I slipped past his administrative firewalls in less than 8 minutes. I wasn't looking to delete the framed evidence. That would just trigger an automated redundancy backup. I needed to build a guillotine. I wrote a highly aggressive, self-replicating zero-day worm. I didn't target the stolen source code. I targeted the IPO's core financial registry. Then, I pulled the raw, deleted server logs from Julian's personal workstation. He thought dragging files to a digital trash bin erased them. I recovered the exact encrypted messages between Julian and the Beijing server farm. I recovered the bank routing numbers for the $15,400,000 offshore wire transfer he received in exchange for the treason. I packaged every single IP trace, the Beijing communications, and the offshore bank receipts into a massive, heavily encrypted forensic dossier. I didn't send it to local law enforcement. I routed the entire package directly to the Cyber Division of the FBI, the SEC Enforcement Office, and the Department of Homeland Security. I attached my federal security clearance code to bypass the lower-level analysts. The subject line was exactly 6 words: active corporate espionage, flight risks, warrants. I didn't stop there. I embedded the dossier into the core presentation software running the live IPO launch in San Francisco. I set a digital tripwire. I didn't sleep for 2 days. I drank black coffee. I kissed Chloe on the forehead when she left for school. I packed a tailored black suit. I drove to San Francisco. The Apex Dynamics IPO launch was the biggest tech event of the quarter. It was held in a massive, ultra-modern convention center in the financial district. 2,000 people were packed into the auditorium. Tech journalists, venture capitalists, retail investors. The stage was bathed in aggressive blue lighting. Suspended 30 feet directly above the stage was the VIP Founders Suite. It was a soundproof, glass-enclosed box designed to let the executives watch the crowd like gods looking down from Mount Olympus. I bypassed the press pit. I scanned my corporate badge. I walked directly into the VIP suite. The room smelled like expensive catered salmon, cold air conditioning, and predatory greed. Margaret was standing by the floor-to-ceiling glass, wearing a pristine white designer suit. Julian was pacing the floor, checking his gold Rolex, holding a crystal glass of champagne. They were exactly 6 minutes away from ringing the digital NASDAQ bell. They were 6 minutes away from cashing out $400 million. I stood completely silent in the back corner of the suite. No lawyers, no backup. Just my encrypted tablet resting in my hands. Margaret noticed me. She walked over, her heels clicking sharply against the hardwood floor. "You actually showed up," Margaret sneered, looking me up and down with absolute disgust. "I told you to stay home and manage the girl." "I came to watch the bell ring," I said. My voice was completely flat, devoid of any human inflection. Julian laughed. He walked over, swirling his champagne. "See? I told you she'd fall in line," Julian bragged, tapping his Rolex. "The FBI hasn't even knocked on your door yet. Stop being dramatic, Evelyn. We're about to be filthy rich." I didn't blink. I let the silence stretch. 90 seconds until the broadcast went live to millions of investors. The tension in the VIP suite started to shift. Margaret narrowed her eyes. Her sociopathic radar finally picked up on the fact that I wasn't shaking. I wasn't crying. "What are you doing on that tablet?" Margaret snapped. "Just checking the server loads," I replied coldly. Below us, the massive LED screens in the auditorium began counting down from 60. The crowd of 2,000 people started cheering. The financial news anchors on the floor looked directly into their cameras. 50 seconds. "Put the tablet away, Evelyn," Julian commanded, his polished facade cracking just a fraction of an inch. "You're making me nervous." "You shouldn't be nervous, Julian," I said. my fingers hovering over the glass screen. You covered your tracks perfectly. Chloe takes the fall. You get the money. 40 seconds. I looked directly into my mother's eyes. Did you actually think I would let you sacrifice my daughter for a stock price? I whispered. The fake corporate smile completely melted off Margaret's face. Her skin turned a sickening, ghostly shade of ashen gray. Evelyn, stop, Margaret ordered, her voice trembling. 10 seconds. I didn't break eye contact. I pressed one single key. The digital tripwire snapped. Below us, the massive 40-foot presentation monitors in the auditorium violently flickered. The beautiful, branded Apex Dynamics logo completely disappeared. It was instantly replaced by a blinding white screen. Displayed in massive, glowing black text was the raw, unedited email thread between Julian and the Beijing server farm. Right next to it, highlighted in bright, violent red, was the $15 million wire transfer receipt. And below that, flashing for 2,000 people and a live national television broadcast to see, was the digital forensic trace proving Julian spoofed an 18-year-old girl's IP address. The countdown clock froze at 0. The deafening roar of the crowd died in a fraction of a second. The silence that fell over the massive auditorium was so heavy, it felt like a physical weight. Julian dropped his crystal champagne flute. It shattered against the hardwood floor of the VIP suite. "Turn that off!" Julian screamed, his voice cracking into a pathetic, high-pitched wail. "Cut the main feed right now!" He lunged toward the suite's control panel. But the absolute nightmare had only just begun. The heavy, soundproof glass doors of the VIP Founders Suite didn't just open. They were violently kicked completely off their hinges. The piercing shriek of federal sirens outside finally bled through the thick walls of the convention center. A dozen heavily armed FBI agents and Homeland Security Cyber Command operators flooded the glass box. When federal treason charges enter the room, corporate lawyers do not protect you. They scatter like rats. "Julian Vance! Margaret Vance!" the lead federal agent roared, his weapon drawn. "Show me your hands right now!" Margaret physically collapsed against the glass wall. "No, wait, please!" Margaret hyperventilated, mascara running down her face in thick black lines. "It was a hack! We were hacked by a competitor!" 2 agents stormed forward. They grabbed my mother by the shoulders, spun her around, and slammed her face first against the heavy glass overlooking the crowd. The heavy steel handcuffs clicked loudly over her designer blazer. Julian tried to scramble backward over a leather couch. He didn't make it 3 feet. An FBI operator tackled him directly into a glass coffee table. The table shattered instantly. Julian was pinned to the ground, sobbing hysterically, bleeding from a cut on his forehead. They hauled him to his feet. They dragged them both out of the VIP suite, parading them past the live national news cameras on the convention floor. Publicly destroyed. Completely annihilated in front of the exact investors they committed treason to impress. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I just closed my tablet, placed it gently on the ruined coffee table, and walked out the side exit into the bright California sun. The legal fallout over the next 8 months was an absolute, unmitigated bloodbath. There was no instant corporate bailout. The federal justice system is incredibly slow, and it is entirely brutal. The SEC immediately halted trading on Apex Dynamics. The company stock crashed to 0 in 48 hours. The FBI executed a total, uncompromising asset freeze on Julian and Margaret's entire portfolios. Because of the pristine forensic dossier I submitted, Chloe's name was completely expunged from the federal warrants before the sun even set. Her Pentagon clearance was reinstated with an official apology from the Cyber Command Director. Julian was denied bail. He is currently sitting in a maximum security federal lockup, facing 45 years for corporate espionage, wire fraud, and treason. Margaret was slapped with a massive 20-year sentence for accessory to espionage and obstruction of justice. They lost absolutely everything: their money, their freedom, and their precious corporate legacy.
Their Palo Alto compounds were seized by the federal government. I didn't attend their sentencing hearings. I do not care if they rot in a concrete box for the rest of their natural lives. It is a quiet Tuesday morning. I am standing in the kitchen of my house, holding a mug of black coffee. Chloe is dragging 2 heavy suitcases down the hallway. She is wearing an MIT sweatshirt, smiling brightly as she packs the trunk of my car. She has absolutely no idea about the war I waged in the shadows to protect her, and she never will. If this story resonated with you, drop a yes in the comments. Make sure you hit that subscribe button right now. You do not want to miss next week's video. A wealthy father-in-law tries to secretly liquidate a woman's tech startup out from under her, only to realize the daughter-in-law legally embedded a digital kill switch into the core architecture. Monsters don't always wear ski masks.
Sometimes they wear pristine white designer suits and smile for Forbes magazine. But the absolute greatest payback isn't screaming or begging for an apology. It's handing the predators a shovel and watching them dig their own graves on live national television.